Well, okay, now it's live.
Yay, we did it. We actually went on time. Okay.
Guys, we're on time by 1 second.
Here you go. All right, cool.
Before we start, I wanted to ask you guys a question. What's a Happer name?
Just it's a term for half Asian.
No, I said, I know what it means. I said, what's Happer name? You know, dad joke. What's happening?
Yeah. The play on, I don't know how to explain it, but it's more like a parody.
We was also saying what's happening. That's what he was saying.
Oh, what's happening?
Yeah, he was joking with us.
Oh, I missed that.
Like, our name means this, and then he's like, "Nah, I'm just trying to joke with you."
No, it's funny.
I know exactly what it means. I've been dealing with the Happer extremists for years now. The guys won't leave me alone.
Yeah, we can talk about those lovely people.
But first, I mean, obviously, probably everybody already knows who you are, but if you could just introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Winston. Most people know me as Serpentza. Or people call me Serpentza for some reason, but Serpentza. And I'm the first person to ever make YouTube videos out of mainland China. And I've been living here in mainland China for more than 12 years now. And I've been doing YouTube videos for more than 10.
Wow.
It's a long time.
Yeah, that is a long time. That's like back when YouTube was still really
like
good.
A baby, yeah. Back when you could actually just post videos and not worry about it. Is it gonna get demonetized? Is it gonna get kicked off?
Yeah, I know. And you could just post garbage and people would watch it. You know, you could just post yourself singing a song or something. You know.
that was back when Fred was the #1 YouTuber.
Oh, I don't even know what that is.
Anyway.
So you said that you've run in with the Happer extremists before a lot.
Yeah, no, they hate my guts. You know, I have a Chinese wife, so that's the main reason. But also because I am the first YouTuber in China, as you know. So I make a lot of videos about life in China. And about 7 or 8 years ago, I got a lot of questions from my subscribers asking me, you know, is it easy to date a Chinese girl? Can I get a Chinese girlfriend? Like, what are relationships like? And I got so many of these kind of questions specifically about girls, you know, about Chinese girls and dating Chinese girls. So I made a video which is titled, "Are Chinese Girls Easy?" with a question mark, because that's the question I kept getting from everyone, right?
Yeah.
And then during the course of the video, I explained that no, not really. I mean, yeah, it's pretty easy as a foreigner to get into a relationship here, but the relationships are tough, man. Cross-cultural relationships are always a big challenge. And especially in mainland China, you're dealing with people that haven't had any kind of exposure to Western culture, and they have a completely different mindset, and they're very traditional, at least the families are. So it leads to a lot of trouble. So that's the gist of the video. But the title of the video, "Are Chinese Girls Easy?" kind of set these guys, you know, like made them go crazy. And they started these like hate forums against me. And, you know, they send me hate mail, and they try to attack my, you know, different sites, try to flag me, try to edit my Wikipedia page all the time, that kind of crap, you know?
That's crazy. It's like they didn't even watch the video. They just,
they're
like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they keep going on in their forums about like, how dare this guy marry a pretty Chinese girl, you know, he's causing more happers, you know, that kind of thing. You know, I think you guys are probably familiar with them, right?
Yeah. The only hapas they do like is if it's an Asian male, white female, like they're totally fine with that. But
it's the other way around.
Yeah, if it's white male, Asian, it's like their heads just.
I mean, you know, you have to understand that I'm quite familiar with this kind of thing because originally I'm from South Africa, and there's a similar sentiment when you've got like a white lady and a black man. You'll get the same kind of people, like these sort of racist types that'll just really go apeshit and run around, you know, getting really upset about that kind of thing. It's just human nature, really. But you know, they take it to another level. The Happer guys, they really do. You know?
Yeah, the thing I don't understand about them is that they seem kind of like they hate themselves, but they're okay with that, and they decide to just run with that and bash other people. It's like, isn't that kind of self-deprecating? I don't know.
Yeah. It is actually fairly easy to understand if you think about it from a psychological point of view, especially since what they're doing is they've found the easiest excuse for all their failures in life. You know, I think everybody goes through a period, especially when you're a little younger, when you're trying to, you know, get into the dating game, or maybe you're trying to get into work or whatever. Everybody faces a lot of obstacles, right? And I think it's much easier just to say, oh, you know, I can't get a date because, you know, I'm a hacker, or because I'm this color, or because I come from this area, or because I don't have this, or because I don't have that. So I think that's what they latch onto, is like all the problems in my life, which actually are their own problems, you know, things that they should figure out by themselves. They're like, it's because my dad went to Thailand and look at me now, you know, that kind of thing. So it's a good excuse. It's a fantastic excuse. You could use it for anything. You could be like, oh, you know, I suck at doing this because, you know, my dad went to the Philippines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the perfect scapegoat.
It is. It is. You can literally use it for anything, you know? And if they're good at something as well, like say they just happen to be good at doing X, Y, Z, they could also be like, that's because of my Asian side, or that's because of my this, or that. You know, it's super easy. It's a Swiss Army knife, you know? It's one of these. You use it for any excuse.
Yeah.
Pretty sad how they do that, but I mean, once you grow up, then you kind of realize that you got to take charge of your own life.
Yeah.
You don't have a whole lot of time.
Regardless of your circumstances, you can still change it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, speaking of that, I was wondering, how was it like growing up in South Africa?
Yeah.
Well, it's, you know, the thing is, it's not that much different to growing up, you know, I'd say in a place like America or Australia or anything like that. You know, although the country was in a lot of turmoil the whole time, especially when I grew up, apartheid had just been abolished. So, you know, there was a change of government. There were a lot of crazy things. I've seen some really crazy things growing up as far as, you know, like protests and people being murdered and all sorts of disgusting things that I've seen with my own eyes, unfortunately. But that's part of a country that's going through massive change. But I was just like everyone else. I went to school. I had to, you know, work hard to earn money to buy my first car. You know, I had to get a job. It's all very normal, very, very sort of middle-class upbringing. The only difference being that I lived in Africa and there was all sorts of crap going on around me. And of course, Africa is a place full of adventure. And I have a very special circumstance because my father is a sort of a world-renowned reptile expert, like snake handler type guy. Think of the Crocodile Hunter, but the South African version, right? So I grew up with snakes and pets that were ridiculous, you know, so that's why the serpent, you know, and Serpentza, that's where that comes from, because I grew up with snakes.
Okay, we were going to ask that, because I know on your Wikipedia page it says that, but it doesn't explain why. Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, you know, growing up in South Africa was, and I've been to the States and I've been to other places. I could say it's very similar to any kind of Western country. The only difference is I was always a minority, because white people in South Africa are like a small percentage, something like less than 10% at the moment, I believe. So, you know, that's the only major difference, is that I grew up a minority, basically.
It's interesting.
Yeah, although, like, I don't know, do you consider yourself Asian or white? Because then you always feel like you know what I mean?
I guess, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's an interesting one. Like, I'd say that you could call yourself a majority everywhere, because if you look at the globe, there are more Asians than there are white people anyway. So
that's true. I guess it was talking about, like, you know, a specific area, like here in America, you know, obviously it's more. Yeah. It's more of a white population.
But it's kind of weird, because like when I was in Asia, because I lived in Thailand for about 3 months, and some people thought I was Thai, but other people like treated me like as a foreigner. So it's kind of
right. Yeah, honestly, I do think it's got a lot to do, for as far as I'm concerned anyway. It's more your culture and the way you grew up, you know, because I have some friends here, you know, we call them ABCs or bananas or whatever, you know, the kind of guys who grew up overseas and were born in America or Canada or something, and they look Chinese, 100%, because they are ethnically. But they're 100%, you know, on my level as far as being a foreigner is concerned. And it can be quite an interesting situation, because, well, not that long ago, I went out for dinner, and we're sitting in a restaurant, and this is a guy just visiting me from America. He can't speak a lick of Chinese, but I ordered all the food. Waitress comes, looks at him, and I ordered the food from the waitress. So she writes it down, and then she tries to confirm it with him. She's like, in Chinese, this is what you ordered, right, to the Chinese American guy. And he's like, I don't know what you're saying. And I keep saying, like, yeah, that's what we ordered. Then she goes, she gets the food, and she keeps coming back and asking him questions all the time. Even though I'm the guy who ordered everything, I speak in Chinese, he can't speak anything, but she keeps coming back to him because they just can't wrap their mind around it that there's a Chinese guy who can't speak Chinese, you know? It's a weird situation here.
That's a bit weird for her too, knowing that, oh my God, this white guy speaking really perfect Chinese, and this Chinese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's kind of awkward, but funny at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, for me anyway, when it comes to race, it's not as important when it comes to being like I'd say a Westerner or a foreigner. It's more about your personality and how you were brought up, you know? Yeah.
That makes sense to me, especially like in our country, it's kind of like, I guess, a melting pot or multicultural, so it makes sense to me.
The sad thing though nowadays is, you know, I guess it can't be helped, you know, sadly, but a lot of people, they just look at it as a race thing, and they only see you as what you are in terms of, you know, your appearance. They don't care about your personality.
I don't know about other countries, but it seems like it's getting that way here. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can see that from over here, and I have I guess you could say I'm lucky in a way that I grew up a minority my whole life, and then at the age of 25, when I moved to China, I was still a minority, right? In fact, even more of a minority because there are so few foreigners living in China. If you look at it as a whole, like if I can walk around in my city for a week and not see another foreigner, it's possible for that to happen, right? And so I've always been a minority, but it's never been a point of like, how can I say, contention. I don't go around shouting like, oh, I'm a minority, I'm you know, I'm so disadvantaged because I'm a minority. In fact, it's never been like that for me. It's just like, hey, I'm just happen to not be part of the major mainstream. And I kind of like that, actually. It's nice. And I do think that in America, there is a big drive for everybody trying to be special and different and individual. And I think, you know, when people reach a certain point where they realize that, hang on, you know, maybe I'm not so special. Maybe like there isn't actually anything good about me. I can't do anything special. I'm not great. But guess what? I'm like a third Polynesian, or I'm, you know, I'm black, or I'm Indian, or I've got a Native American grandparent or something. Then all of a sudden it's like, look at me. I'm, you know, I'm different from you because, you know, I've got a grandfather that's
That's a really good.
Yeah, it's just like.
I think that's what people do because they can't find anything that they can show for, so they come up with stuff that is in their ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I come across this stuff. You have no idea. You know, I have to fight with nationalists every day. My YouTube channel is constantly under attack by Chinese nationalists because they hate me, right? Most Chinese people love me, like all the ones that I meet on the street. Like every single Chinese subscriber I've ever met is, or random guy on the street. They're like, I love your videos. They watch my videos. But there's this like massive group, and you know, because China's so huge and there's such a big population, even like a 1% of China is like millions of people, right? So, you know, you've got this group of people that hate my guts because they feel like I'm giving China a bad name. Because I do discuss like topics about China which aren't like all very 100% positive, right? So I'll say something about China like the scams videos. This happens in China. I'm trying to use it as a warning, so that when people come to visit China, they can actually enjoy themselves and have a great time, you know, and then they'll have a positive idea of China. But these nationalist guys just see me as someone trying to spread like negative propaganda about China. So they go after me all the time. And it's dealing with these guys for so long has just taught me how ridiculous the whole situation is. And it basically boils back down to what I was just saying a short while ago. You know, I can't remember the guy's name, but there's this guy said something very, very good, like a long time ago. He said that nationalism is the last refuge of the scoundrel. So in other words, when you've got nothing that you yourself can be proud of, what's the one thing that you can always fall back on is your nationality, which is something that you were never given. It's not something that you earned. You just happen to be born in a country, right? And so, I mean, if that's the only thing you can be proud of, you know, at the end of the day, if the only thing that you can be super proud of is the fact that you're Chinese or that you're American or that you're this or that you're that, it means that you actually suck at everything else because you can't be proud of anything else in your life, right?
That sounds so libertarian.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I would totally agree with that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with being proud of your country. I mean, like that, don't get me wrong, you can be very proud of being a XYZ, but yeah, that shouldn't be like your most proud thing or your most important thing because, you know, you didn't choose that. You were just given that by chance.
Yeah, and pointing out flaws in the country you live in is, I think, is something that should be, you know, it should be a healthy thing to talk about. Like, hey, there's something wrong here in this country. Why can't we at least, you know, discuss it or talk about it? You know, like we were saying with the scamming thing. I mean, if it's a huge problem there, yeah, you should definitely, you know, point it out.
Yeah, bring it to it.
Yeah. I agree. And look, that's a Western mindset. That's definitely not a Chinese mindset because, you know, from a young age, you're taught here never to, you know, question anything or say anything bad about anything unless it's someone else, you know, unless it's a different country. So that's why I get this backlash, is because it's actually a cultural clash right here. Because Western people like yourselves, you know, living in a Western country, you know, it's common. That's why you have all these protesters and all this Antifa and all this nonsense that goes on over there. It's because people are, you know, like, hey, screw this. We don't like this about the country. We don't like this about people. We don't like, and you can say it and you can express it. But over here, you don't do that because there's just no point. It will just cause trouble for your life.
Yeah. So in the chat, they're wanting to ask your thoughts on, I don't know how you pronounce this person's name. I guess they're named Michelle Ellman. She's a half Chinese British feminist, and her claim that Hong Kong is littered with ads featuring white models promoting white beauty standards. Is that prominent there, or is it just? Yeah.
I mean, I don't know who this Michelle person is, but she can stop whining because it sounds like she's got nothing better to do with her time. Honestly, Hong Kong used to be a British colony, and to this day, it still maintains most of what it was. It's been handed over back to China in 1997, but they were given like I think a 45 or 50, no, it was a 50-year grace period, and during those 50 years, they were allowed to continue as they were. So in other words, like uninterrupted. So their law system, the entire Hong Kong basically could just continue. Because it would be like suicide if they just changed the government and they changed everything. Because Hong Kong is a massive financial hub in Asia. You know, there's all the shipping lanes go there, and it's like the richest city in the world. If you go to Hong Kong, it's amazing. It's beautiful. I love Hong Kong, right? But it's a British colony, and a lot of the local people still look up to the whole sort of British way of life. So, you know, you go to Hong Kong, and it's really quite bizarre because although it's a very sort of Chinese city, Chinese people everywhere, it's got British architecture, it's got sort of London buses type thing, you know, it's got trams, it looks like England. And the adverts are the same. I mean, you've got Marks and Spencer's, you know, you got all these like ridiculous British brands, and because it was a British colony for so long, the people there adapted, and they adapted to the British way of life, and they adapted to British ideals. So they have sort of British names that they've given themselves. They've got British passports, most of them. There's kind of like Hong Kong British passport type thing. So yeah, British adverts are everywhere. And of course, like British adverts are usually white people in them, you know, not all the time, but it's quite common because you've got all the big brands there. But she's talking a bunch of nonsense because you get tons of Asian models there too. You know, you see Angela Baby, or you see, you know, all these like sort of British and Asians and mixes. So I mean, it's a mix. I think what she's doing is she's got blinkers on, and she can only see the white people in the adverts, and she's ignoring all the Asians because it really is a mix. And I can go there, and I can go there tomorrow, and I can take photos of billboards, and I bet you that it will be like majority Asian anyway. Because Hong Kong's got tons of famous movie stars and stuff that they use all the time. So she's talking nonsense.
You should do a video about that, just taking pictures of the advertisements there, and just be like, hey, there's one with an Asian person, there's one with an Asian person. Gotcha.
Exactly.
There was, I was going to ask you, because that kind of reminded me of, a lot of people say that Hapas or like half Asian people are overrepresented in like Asian media as far as like ads and stuff like that. Do you think that has, because one of their claims is that that has to do with white supremacy or something like that. So do you think that has to do with it, or?
No, it's got everything to do with Asian supremacy as far as I'm concerned. If I can say that. Asian people love Huanshui. It's called Huanshui, which means mixed blood. Okay, Chinese people, I should say, not Asians. I'm guessing Asians in general, but Chinese people love the idea of mixed blood children. And every single Chinese person that ever finds out that I'm married to a Chinese person, if they meet us, they'll say like, oh, your kids are going to be beautiful and smart. And literally that's what they say, everybody. It's just part of the culture. It's part of the sort of social mind over here that if a foreigner and a Chinese person have a child, that child is going to be, number one, smart, and number two, pretty or handsome. And that's just the way it is. That's a Chinese thing. That's not a white supremacy thing. And then more Chinese people than white people, so.
There you go. That brings your And it's funny because I try to argue with people who talk about that all the time, but then I don't know what position I'm in because I don't live in Asia, so I can't speak for them. So, you know.
Well, I certainly can. A lot of people tell me that I should get lost and get out of China and stuff. But you know what? I've been here 12 years. I'm married to a Chinese woman. I have a Chinese family. You know, don't forget all my in-laws, all my uncles, all this. You know, I'm invested in this country, and I've spent so long here that I can definitely speak for China, and I can tell you what's going on in China at the very least. And you know, my Chinese family and every single Chinese friend of mine likes the idea of a Huanshui, mixed blood. You know, alhapa basically. They love it. They think they all want that for some reason. I mean, a lot of the guys don't like the fact that you got white guys dating the girls, but at the same time, they'll still say, oh, you know, if you have a kid, it'll be smart and beautiful. So, yeah.
Good stereotype to live up to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you also, what made you decide to move to China in the first place?
Well, the thing is, it was February of 2006 I came to China, and I came on a business trip because a client of mine had actually basically paid me, well, not paid me, they paid for my plane ticket to come here to take a look at some technological stuff that he was going to import, you know, because I'm an IT guy actually, so that was my job. And I spent three days here in Shenzhen, and in those 3 days I had more fun and saw more interesting things than I'd had in a year back home. And I just decided, you know, I was 25 at the time, and I was like, you know what, this is where I want to be. So I went back home, I sold my cars, I sold my furniture, I covered all my debts, and then I just left and I came here. And it was a hell of a struggle because I didn't know anyone, I didn't have a job. And yeah, I was homeless for about 3 days at one point, you know, during this whole thing. But I figured it out, and I had an amazing adventure because China is, especially for a young guy, it's amazing because the city of Shenzhen, when I moved here, the average age was 25. It's an incredibly young city. So everywhere you look, it's young people. You go out at night, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. There are people out there drinking beer, having barbecue on the side of the road. You know, there are neon lights everywhere. It's like Blade Runner, you know, at night. And I love that because I'm all into technology and stuff. So it's just like, damn, I want to be here. It's a happening place. There's so much going on, you know?
Yeah. So like when you moved, you basically just dropped everything and left and then learned Chinese as you went?
That's crazy.
That is crazy. That's awesome, though.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's a crazy decision, but you're very determined to do it. So yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So when you learn Chinese, did you take classes, or you just kind of learned by talking to people? Or?
Well, you know, Chinese is, it's not as difficult as most people think, but it is still a completely different language to what, you know, what we're used to. It's completely different to any kind of Western language. So when I got here, I managed to figure things out because it's quite easy to pick up phrases, you know, how to say hello, thank you, or, you know, I need a cold beer or something like that. You know, you can pick up the very basic essentials. But then, you know, putting a sentence together is actually really difficult because you don't know where these phrases go and how you can mix them together. And in 2008, you know, the Olympics were happening here, and there was huge, like massive visa issues and crackdowns. And the only way I could get a visa to stay was to get a student visa through the university. Because the usual like business visas and stuff that I was on before they just weren't available anymore to South Africans specifically, like anyone from Africa, because they're very discriminatory against Africans here. So if you've got an African passport, you're screwed basically. It's really difficult. Anyway, so I had to get the student visa, and it's probably the best thing I ever did because for 6 months I did a Chinese language course, which taught me how to read and write Chinese. And that's the important part, is as soon as you can recognize characters, right, and you can, you know, not necessarily write them, but read them, suddenly you understand that the words you've been saying, because it breaks it down very nice and easy for you, because Chinese is actually quite simple, right? So you'll be able to see, like, I don't know if you guys can see it. It's a train ticket that I got a while ago. Can you see that? Is that clear or not? Maybe not.
Yeah, I can see.
But there, like, that says Guangzhou Nanjiang, which means the Guangzhou South Station, right? Now, if someone said to me, like, Guangzhou Nanjiang, I'd be like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, it's just a bunch of random words. But once you know the characters, like Guangzhou Nanjiang, and you know, like, Nan is south, Jiang means station, you know, Guangzhou is a city, it just starts to make sense. And then you can start to put together, like, actual sentences, and you can figure things out, because now it's not just a bunch of random sounds. You can actually put pictures to it, and you can figure it out. So that little course that I did that taught me how to read and write, suddenly my Chinese just went from, like, 0 basically up to, like, 5, you know, out of 10, which was great.
Oh, wow. Yeah, like, whenever I studied Japanese for a while, and then you get to the part where you have to learn kanji, which is basically Chinese characters. And I was just like, this is insane. Like, I don't know how people do this. So
well, that's the thing with Japanese, is they make it too easy because they've got hiragana and katakana, right? So it starts out with, like, baby steps, and it's like, okay, you've got your romanji, then you've got that, and then finally it's like this daunting, like, kanji, which looks so complicated. But with Chinese, there's nothing. It's just like, bam, you know, right into the kanji, and then you've just got to figure it out. Yeah.
Crazy. You're gonna ask one of the other ones, right?
Yeah, I was gonna ask. I wanted to know also, how did you end up meeting your wife?
Oh, I mean, she's a doctor, and I used to do sort of medical training for a while, because, you know, I got my legs, basically starting by teaching English, right? The first job I got here, because I told you I was homeless for a while, but this agent basically let me sleep on his couch and got me, like, a kindergarten job, where I was teaching kindergarten, which is one of the worst jobs you can ever have in your entire life, to be honest, especially if you're someone like me. I totally love kids, but, you know, like, huge classes of little, like, 4 or 5-year-old kids climbing on you and blowing their noses on you and all sorts of weird stuff. It's just not my idea of a good time. So anyway, I started out with that, but of course, once I'd gotten on my feet, I started to make a lot of contacts, and I came across a guy who was starting a medical company that basically got a big government contract, and what they do is they send doctors to Australia, Germany, places like that, to do, like, a short 3-month internship to learn about how hospitals and medicine and stuff work in those different countries. And he needed somebody who was, you know, like, presentable, and somebody who would be, like, responsible and be able to teach these doctors about the rules and etiquette and, of course, medical terminology, things like that, for overseas. So he knew me, and I fit the bill, and he's like, listen, you're going to have to study this Merck manual, which is like the medical dictionary thing. You're going to have to study this. You're going to have to study all this coursework, blah, 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 blah. But then, you know, like, go ahead and do that, and then we can start training these doctors. So I did it, and it was a pain in the ass, but it was a huge jump. I went from sort of English teaching because that's what I was doing before. You know, I did kindergarten. After kindergarten, I went into training centers and that kind of thing. But it was a chance for me to break out of the English teaching game. And although it was something kind of similar, still training a group of adults in, you know, cultural things, and you know, there was some language in the medical terminology. It was something completely different, and so I jumped at the chance, and I ended up doing that for about 5 years. And during that time, I taught a group of young doctors that were going to Australia for a 3-month internship. And my wife was actually in the class, but I always had a very strict policy of never, you know, never mix business and pleasure. Don't date, you know, any of your students, that kind of thing. So even though like I thought she was really attractive and I could kind of tell she liked me, we didn't do anything about it. But 3 months later, when she came back from Australia, we got together to talk about the experiences she'd had, and you know, things kind of went from there. She wasn't my student anymore, you know, that kind of thing. So it was fine. Yeah. So that's how I met her.
Does she speak English too then?
Yeah, her English isn't bad. It's not fantastic, but it's all right. And you know, because I can speak like okay Chinese, we find a good middle ground where, you know, there's very rarely a misunderstanding. So like if she can't express herself in English, I'll use Chinese. If I can't express myself in Chinese, she uses English. So, you know, it's pretty good mix.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, that works out.
Yeah. I don't understand how these guys do it, because like a lot of my subscribers ask me for help a lot, you know, because I've got a ton of subscribers who are dating or are married to Chinese women, and like they can't speak Chinese and the women can't speak English, and I'm like, what the hell are you guys doing? Yeah. How do you manage this, you know? And they're like pulling out phrase books and electronic dictionaries and Google Translate and stuff, and I'm like, you know, good luck.
Recipe for disaster.
I know. Imagine trying like wake up in the morning and then pull up the dictionary and be like, "How do I tell her what I'm doing today?"
Yeah. How do I tell her? How do I say good morning?
Yeah.
Right. Good. Hold on a second. You say, hold on. Don't wake up yet.
Yeah. I can't imagine a relationship with someone who doesn't like. If I don't speak their language at all and they don't speak my language at all, that would be extremely hard.
It is. And I had a relationship or two like that when I first got here. You know, obviously I couldn't speak Chinese when I got here. I got into a relationship fairly early on, and it's really frustrating. It causes so much trouble. But at the same time, there's something to be said about not understanding each other, because then you can just picture in your mind kind of what this person's personality is like, right? And they could probably be your ideal person, and simply because you can't communicate just means you can't argue about things. So you're like, I got the perfect girlfriend, you know, she's awesome. Like we go out, we have fun, we have drinks, you know, everything's good. We never argue. That's just because we can't understand each other.
Yeah, it's like we can't argue because we can't understand each other's language.
Yeah, I know, right?
That works out somehow.
Yeah, I think it does.
It's kind of funny.
I know you kind of touched up on it. You know, we kind of talked about before about being being with a Chinese woman as a white man. But I know obviously you get all that internet hate. But how is it like in terms of actually out in public? Like, do you ever get any weird looks, or you know, anyone telling you, hey, you know, I wish this wasn't happening, or
is it pretty normal?
You know, it depends where you are in China, to be honest. China's you know, quite different. I guess it's the same in America. You've got the deep south and you've got the east coast, the west coast. It's all different kind of ideas. Right. But in general, I've never had any problems whatsoever, because Chinese society is very non-confrontational, right? That's something that you'll learn here. Is people don't just come up to you and start, you know, getting in your face. It doesn't happen. So one thing I do notice is there's a specific generation of, you know, it's the lost generation, we call them, and I call them evil uncles. So you'll get evil uncles, which are sort of the old Red Guard, Mao Zedong era, sort of communist spy type people, you know, those guys. Those really annoying old, you know, they're all in their sort of 60s and 70s and stuff. And they'll give me like a scowling look every once in a while. I'll see that, I'll catch that. But other than that, like, I've never had any issues. Yeah.
That's good to know. It's only on the internet, which means that it's not really real life.
It's not real.
They live in China. They probably don't even know anything.
Yeah, they probably live like in the U.S. or Canada or something. They probably live in their
mom's basement or something.
Yeah, and I do find that, you know, a lot of the hate that I get, the worst haters are these sort of Chinese guys that have gone overseas to study and stuff, and they're living in an isolated bubble overseas where they don't interact with the locals. And so what they do is, like you say, they live in their dorm room or their dorm basement or wherever the hell they are. And they keep looking back to China because they can't find an affinity with anyone over there. And they just stick in their groups. You find it's a big problem with overseas students and stuff, is they don't like to mingle with the local people. They don't even like to try the local food. They kind of only eat Chinese food, and they only talk in Chinese to their Chinese friends and classmates. And those guys build up a lot of resentment for foreigners because they're just not figuring it out, and they can't get along with them. So then they come and see my videos, and they watch my videos, and they're like, screw you, how dare you talk about my China like that type thing. So yeah, most of them actually are overseas. There's a very famous guy who harasses all of the China vloggers from Canada. He calls himself Dr. Aaron, and he's like the biggest loser in the world. Yeah.
I wonder if that's because we were looking up videos, and I wonder, there's that one, what was that one guy that we just saw who was like trashing him for no reason?
Oh yeah, like
it's probably him.
Yeah, it might have been him. I think it was like, I don't know what YouTube.
There was something.
Is it that Vietnamese guy? Is it the Vietnamese Australian?
His YouTube. Yeah.
We call him the catfish because he kind of looks like a catfish. Yeah, he's a really annoying guy. Yeah, but he gave up a while ago. He like made a whole bunch of videos trying to expose me and slander me and weird things, which is all a bunch of nonsense. If you can even make it through one of those videos, congratulations. But you know, he did like 4 in a row, and then he gave up eventually.
Yeah, we tried to watch one of them, and we made it through about 3 minutes.
Yeah. Then we were like, this is boring.
Yeah. It really is. I mean, if you're going to make a drama video, at least make it interesting, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, if you're going to, I don't know, like expose other people.
Now, the one video that was a huge drama was the C-Milk video. I mean, my goodness, you went after holy shit.
Yeah, it was funny. Yeah, he likes to do those kind of fake expose things. It's kind of funny, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny because that was one of the top videos. If you search your name on YouTube, then that's like the top video, other than your video.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
So how did you start doing your show on YouTube? You just like, you know, once you started moving to China, you got your life in order. You know, you started doing it then, or was it always something you wanted to do after you moved to China, or you kind of just went, you know, kind of started doing it?
Well, you know, don't forget back then YouTube wasn't really a thing. You know,
right.
YouTube, I wasn't even really paying attention to YouTube. I started my account in 2006 when YouTube first opened, but I hadn't posted any videos. The thing is, I was in China and I kept getting messages from people, especially friends and family, like, what the hell are you doing in China? It's so dangerous there. You know, it's like they're going to arrest you and, you know, put you in front of a firing squad and send the price of the bullet to your family. And, you know, there's all this kind of nonsense that they talk about in the Western sort of Time magazine or whatever. You know, like the thing is, if you watch CNN or BBC, especially back then, anything about China was just like total nonsense. It was like really blown out of proportion. It's like basically as if it's a Soviet gulag or something here, you know, where everybody's working in a sweatshop and, you know, people are being, you know, arrested by the secret police on a daily basis on the streets. But it's not like that, you know. So in order to kind of alleviate the fears and the worries of my friends and family, I thought, you know what, why don't I just show people what's going on, make some videos about daily life, you know. And I was fixing motorbikes and stuff at the time, and so I did a bunch of videos and put them up, and they just started to get more and more sort of following, and people started asking me questions, and that's kind of how it started.
So it must be pretty cool when, you know, people stop you and say, hey, I've seen your videos on YouTube, I want to take a picture. Or, I mean, that's pretty much a good feeling, yeah.
It's weird, and it happens more and more these days. In fact, almost every time I go out, it happens. And I like to go out to, when I'm not actually filming a video, I go out to get B-roll. So what I'll do is I'll go out and just film the streets or something. And like, I always get interrupted because I'm busy filming and someone will be like, hey, I've seen your videos, you know, that kind of thing. It's cool. I like it a lot.
Yeah. So kind of like related to that, what's the weirdest experience you've gotten? Someone either like recognized you or didn't even know who you were, and they kind of just interrupted you.
Geez, let me think. I guess like you could put it down as weird situations where I get, yeah, okay. So I was just filming some B-roll. So in other words, I went to like an old village kind of part of the town. It's like it's still in the city, but it's a bit older. The buildings are older. It looks cool. There's some old stuff. So I'm just like filming randomly. And this old dude kept following me around, like literally wouldn't leave me alone. He like, I could see him. He kept following me around everywhere, right? And he kept getting on his phone and stuff. And later, like a bunch of police turned up and they were like, you know, what's going on here? And they're like coming to talk to me and stuff. And I was just explaining, oh, I'm just taking some photos and videos, which is totally fine and totally legal. There's nothing wrong with it. And then I saw all these police go to talk to this old guy who'd been following me the whole time. And then they spoke for a little while and the police left. And so I went up to the old guy and I'm like, hey man, what's going on here? You know, why are you following me? Why did you call the police on me? And, you know, after a while we got talking and it just turns out that he, you know, Shenzhen's a migrant country, city, sorry, not country, city. Everybody comes from around China to Shenzhen to make their fortune. So he just recently come from Hunan, like the center of Hunan. And Hunan's incredibly sort of backwards when it comes to this whole nationalist sort of thing. Because that's where Mao Zedong was born, right? So they've got massive propaganda everywhere. If you go into Hunan, it literally looks like you've stepped back into the 70s. They've got massive communist billboards everywhere. They've got sort of all these like propaganda everywhere. It's kind of crazy. So the guy had just arrived in Shenzhen and he sees a foreigner walking around with a camera and he thought, oh my God, it's a spy, you know? I've got to report this spy. He's like a foreign spy taking photos of our China, you know? So he called the police and, you know, the police came down and told him that, no, it's totally fine for people to take photos. So yeah, after we cleared that up, you know, he was actually a nice guy. He was just following all the sort of like propaganda stuff that he'd been brought up with, you know? So I don't blame him. Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, growing up like that, he probably thought that it was something fishy. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there was a big topic here, and I kind of wanted to ask. I know you made a video about it, kind of relating to it, but you know the girl here, the white girl who wore the one that wore the Chinese dress. And everyone here
got offended for some reason.
Being offended, you know, including Asian Americans, you know, whatever. And of course, and of course, your video, you know, you're like kind of, I think, I can't remember exactly, but I think you're asking people like what they thought, or like
you show them a picture of like a white girl wearing the qipao.
Wearing a qipao, yeah. You know,
like, oh,
that must be. Thank you, and that must be so embarrassing for that that Jeremy Lamb guy. I think that was his name, because. You know, qipao is definitely not a traditional dress. Qipao is very modern, and in fact, a qipao is pretty much a Western design, a Western take on hanfu, which is a traditional Manchurian dress. And okay, here's the funny part. Here's the funniest part of it all. Qi means flag, right? Okay, so it's basically a flag dress. It's part of Manchurian culture. Manchurians were a minority in China. Okay. And the Manchurians were basically wiped out and assimilated, and their like minority clothes were then appropriated by the Han Chinese and then turned into this qipao. So the whole thing is that this like guy going on about cultural appropriation, he's talking about something that was culturally appropriated from a small minority here in China. So, you know, he was really completely off the mark with that one, you know. And qipaos are not a classy thing. It's not traditional. It's kind of like a prostitute, and it's for prostitutes and waitresses to wear over here, right? It's definitely not something that's like, ooh, my culture, my tradition. It's really, really not. I mean, you know, think about it this way. I can totally tell you how it's like. It's like as if, let's say, American mainstream people started to wear Indian headdresses, you know, those big, you know, things, but like full time. Now that became like something that they all wear. And then someone wears an Indian headdress in another country, and then American people get upset. It's the same thing. It's not actually an American piece of clothing. It was culturally appropriated from a small minority, just like the qipao was culturally appropriated from the Manchurians. So Chinese people actually stole it. It's not originally theirs, if you want to say, if you want to talk in that way, right? And also, it's not a classy piece of clothing. It's literally like for waitresses and prostitutes and things like that. So, you know, the guy was really like, "Ooh, it's my culture." It's like, well, dude, you got to watch out what you say is your culture, because, you know.
So then for you, you probably were like, wow, you're way off.
Yeah.
It so pissed me off so much. That's why I went out on the street and I was like, hey, you know, to Chinese people, what do you think about, you know, our foreign women wearing your qipao? And they're all like, yeah, it's fine, you know, as long as they're not fat, you know.
Yeah, that's funny. They're worried about the weight problem.
Yeah, but as long as it's not fat, it's okay.
Yeah. You know, the crazy thing is that Chinese people love it when foreigners take an interest in their culture in any way, shape, or form, right? And they love seeing foreigners dressed up in traditional Chinese clothing. It's just something that they feel proud of. And don't forget that Chinese people love to wear like Western wedding gowns and tuxedos and stuff when they get their pre-wedding photos and everything. They love to wear all manner of traditional Western clothing. That's, you know, it's part of something they enjoy doing. It's part of the culture here. And Chinese people, like real Chinese people in China, don't have that sort of offended victim mentality thing going on. It just doesn't really happen. You know, they're more than happy to see foreigners wearing qipao, actually. So
I wonder if that has to do with you know how Asian Americans are kind of a minority in the country, so they try to find something to be offended about. It's the same thing with the hat.
yeah, it's exactly the same thing. Because look, I mean, again, if you're feeling out of sorts, and that Jeremy guy looks a little insecure to me just from his picture, you know, he looks like he's probably, you know, not happy with his life, and so he has to find something that makes him feel good about himself. And again, it's nothing that he can personally achieve because he's not very good at anything in life, but a culture that he's loosely connected to through genetics can suddenly be his thing, you know, and that's what kind of makes him different and special. So that's why he gets offended. It's like, oh, my culture, you know. Meanwhile, it's got nothing to do with him, really. So yeah, it's got everything to do with China and Chinese people, and they don't care. And if he cares so much about the culture, why doesn't he come and live here? Like, seriously, come back, come to China. It's awesome. You'll like it, Jeremy. Come here. I'll show you around.
That would be a tweet. Although I think he deleted his Twitter, right?
I have no idea what he did.
The last time I noticed, he deleted his Twitter.
Oh, well,
okay. Probably a good move. I mean, I think that probably backfired in a terrible way for him eventually, because he, you know, got out of hand. So you have to always be very careful what you say on Twitter, which sucks, to be honest. Because sometimes, you know, you'll just want to impulsively say something, and then it comes back to bite you.
Yeah, especially if it goes viral and you don't expect it to go viral, and then people just start insulting you, and then it's kind of overwhelming. But
oh yeah.
Just kind of how the internet is, I guess, nowadays.
Yep, have a thick skin or get out.
Yep, kind of learned that. I guess you probably know that from having so many subscribers and people who watch your YouTube and like on your Instagram and everything too. So
yeah, I mean, I've had real world repercussions here because, you know, I told you about those Chinese nationalists that really hate my guts, and they've got forums on the Chinese internet where they discuss how they can bring me down, and they try to dox me all the time and do things like this. And even had a guy turn up at my wife's work, like turned up at her her hospital. Luckily, she doesn't work in the actual hospital. She works in a clinic that's attached to the hospital, which is far away. But this guy came in asking with a screenshot of me and her that he printed out. He's like, does this woman work here? Asking everybody, and security had to kick him out. But, you know, it's kind of scary. They really try to get to you. And they've had like mass flagging campaigns against me. Like there's a forum where somebody's explaining in Chinese exactly how to go to YouTube, like how to get a VPN, go to YouTube, click on report, click on like abuse, this and that, how to do it. And like hundreds of people try to do it. Luckily it didn't work. I also had a whole bunch of people try to get me deported by saying I'm a military spy and like that I post that I post military base information on Facebook, which is kind of weird because if I was going to post military base information, I wouldn't post it on Facebook, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of the dumbest thing you would do. You're not allowed to do it. And like here in America, you can't really do it because that's illegal. So I'm pretty sure in China it's also illegal.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing though, because they had this forum post and they were saying everybody has to phone the local public security bureau, which is kind of like the controlling police thing for the city, and report me. And a bunch of people did, and I actually got like the police coming to visit me and asking me about this. And after having a chat with the police, it turns out that those guys can get into some serious trouble because you can't report someone as a spy without having proof that they are a spy, right? So they just came to check up on me because they were getting so many calls and emails and stuff about me. So they actually came to see if I was, you know.
Well, that's because that's really scary if you have police coming to your house for that kind of reason. I can't imagine.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I'm kind of used to that anyway, because here in China, if you're a foreigner, you have to be registered with the police anyway. And especially if you have an African passport like I do, South African passport, they come and check up on you every once in a while. So I don't get worried when the police turn up at my door. It happens, you know. It happens maybe whenever there's like a sensitive political conference happening or something. I'll get a knock at the door and there'll be like 6 or 7 policemen there checking my passport and stuff. It's just normal.
Really? So that just happens randomly without notice? They just show up at your door like, can I see your passport?
Yeah, and they do it usually like really late, like midnight or, you know, something like that to make sure you're at home.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if that happened a few times, I guess you'd be used to it. But like to us, that sounds kind of crazy.
Yeah, that sounds like, yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah, it was very uncomfortable, but you know, it's been happening since the beginning. So from 2006, the first time I was like, what the hell is going on? And they came into my apartment and they were like looking around and stuff as well. And I'm like, this is just totally weird. But it's because each police station has to take responsibility for the foreigners that are in their district, right? And they have a list of all the foreigners and they've got everything written up about you, you know, like who you are and all sorts of information about you, who you're married to, where you work, all that kind of crap, right? And every time you exit and come back into China, you're supposed to re-register with them, right? But if you don't re-register with them, they give you a call. They're like, hey, why haven't you re-registered with us? Because, you know, it goes through their system when you exit and enter. So yeah, it can, for most people, I think, that come from like a Western world, it seems like Orwellian, you know, like Big Brother or something, and they get scared. But, you know, when you're used to it, it's not a big deal. Yeah, they're just doing their job, and it's not something that they are going to harass you about or, you know, anything like that. They just have to have that information, and then you can go about your business, do whatever you want. Yeah.
I know how like immigration seems really strict in other countries, but then in our country, in the United States, a lot of people are protesting about our immigration system. When I think I mean, some of it is hard, especially if you're doing it legally, but there's a lot of things that I think are lenient, and I think if they had some perspective on other countries, then they probably wouldn't think the same.
I agree with you, and the thing is, like, I think that America has a very good immigration policy, the legal route. It's very difficult. It's incredibly difficult to do legally. That's why so many people do it illegally. The problem is that it's so lenient towards illegals that it makes people wanting to do the legal route become incredibly frustrated, you know, and probably end up doing it illegally. So I think there needs to be a balance. Yeah.
Especially when they're giving out like all these, you know, all these handouts, if you want to call it, to all these, you know, illegals and illegal immigrants are like, well, what do we get? I mean, you know, it's like, you know, like you were saying, it's a more easy route to go. It is easier.
I know, I mean, this sounds terrible, but I know people who have overstayed their visa or came illegally and then they were given pretty much access to a green card or able to apply for a green card without. I mean, you still have to pay the fees, but it's a lot easier than going through interviews and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and of course, if you're trying to immigrate legally, there's so many things like hoops you have to jump through, and you have to have certain education, certain skills. You have to be. There's a lottery system. It's really difficult, you know. Being a South African, I know because a lot of South Africans, at least white South Africans, have been fleeing the country, and they've been doing it for, you know, more than a decade now. And of course, they try to get into countries like America and Australia, Canada, and America is one of the hardest. Yeah. Even if you like, yeah.
No, I was going to ask, you know, because, you know, you're about South Africa, like what your thoughts are on the current political climate there, you know, especially since, you know, that's your home, you know.
And you're seeing it from the outside.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
It's terrible. I mean, the only thing I can say about South Africa is that it's ruined, it's gone. And there's nothing that can be done to save it, unfortunately. You know, since the time of being here in China, the currency is devalued like double. Basically, put it to you in this perspective. When I arrived 12 years ago in China, the South African currency, the rand, was worth more than the Chinese RMB. So if I had one, like, here's one yuan, right? I would have to spend, well, less, like 80 cents, I would get one of these, right? Now I have to spend like two point something rand to get one of these. It's literally been cut in half.
Yeah, that's 150% increase almost.
Yeah, you know, it's crazy because I had a subscriber come and visit me from South Africa, right? And he was asking, hey, let's go out for dinner. Can we find a place that's like reasonably priced? I said, sure. There's this awesome barbecue place. You probably end up spending about 50 RMB a person. And 50 RMB is nothing. It's like, I don't know how much it is in dollars, but let's just say it's like $2 or something like that. And he's like, man, that's expensive. I'm like, what are you talking about expensive? Because yeah, even in South African money, that's not expensive. That's like, I was thinking like 50 rand. But because of the exchange, like how the economy is imploded, that now equals like 100 and something rand, so it's more than double. So, you know, when you look at it from that perspective, the economy's taken dive so much that it's basically impossible for people to afford a decent lifestyle now. It was difficult even when I was there, incredibly difficult. And on top of that, the violent crime and all the crap that goes on there is just, it'll blow your mind. It's just so bad. People live like prisoners in their own homes. It's terrible. And every single member of my family has been affected very badly by crime. I'm talking like carjackings, home invasion, you know, all sorts of craps happen to my family. I've had friends who were murdered, you know, things like that. It's a shitty place as far as safety is concerned. So yeah, it's terrible. It's so bad that my high school reunion was held in the UK because all of my high school mates ended up moving to the UK.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So your friends and family, have they thought about immigrating, or are they staying in South Africa?
It's kind of difficult, you know, because when you've spent your entire life building your business, you know, investing in your home, you know, spending time to build your life and all your business, all the people you know are there. It's difficult to leave that behind. So especially when you're older, like my parents in their 60s, it's super difficult. And of course, like I said, it's difficult to immigrate to other countries, especially like if you're 60 years old or something. And yeah, it's difficult. My mother does have a British passport because, you know, my grandfather's British, so there's a way out for them to go to England, but it's still difficult to leave, and you can't teach an old dog new tricks type thing. You know?
Yeah, I guess it would be really hard to leave your life that you've completely gotten used to and built there and put so much effort into.
Yeah, it's all you know. So yeah, just all the problems and troubles that they have there, you feel like this is home.
Bittersweet, you know, you can't leave.
Yeah, you also have to understand that there's no, like, especially my parents, they have their own business. They've got no pension fund, right? So they can't live off any kind of anything. So at 60-something years old, for them to move to a new country, even if they could manage it, they still have to generate an income for themselves, which is going to be incredibly hard. You're 60-something years old and having to start from scratch is really just not ideal. So it's a tough situation. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish the media would cover it more because I feel like they don't get enough coverage there.
Yeah, yeah, it's an unfortunate situation, but I think you'll find that you know, if you're, and I hate to bring race into it because it's not the kind of person I am, but if you're white, people just expect you to deal with your own problems. You know what I mean? They don't want to focus on, you know, on white people because they seem to expect better from you than everyone else. So it's like, oh, you're white, you can deal with it yourself. You know, you're not a story. But if you've got starving Ethiopians or something, it's different. But you got starving white people, they don't care. And that's just the world we live in at the moment. And so I think it goes against the narrative that most of the mainstream media wants to portray these days, because they always want to paint the white guy as some kind of oppressive bad guy who controls everything. And if you look at South Africa, where the white guy is a racial minority that's being discriminated against and targeted for attack and being murdered, and basically everyone's had to flee their homeland because there's no other option if they can. It goes completely against the narrative, right? So I think that's why they just don't want to put any kind of focus on it.
Yeah. I guess that makes sense, but it's just pretty sad because there's an actual problem going on, but they don't want to cover it. So I know a lot of like alternative media journalists have been trying to cover it, but of course they're not going to get the kind of traction that like CNN or BBC would get.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you know, like, I really don't like identity politics and all the race things. It's like when there's a problem, when people are in trouble, they should be able to at least get some attention so that people can help them. That's the way I feel. Yeah. It doesn't matter where you're from or what race or what background. You know?
And Lawrence is the one that's really kind of talked a little bit that I know of. I'm sure that
there's probably other people, but
yeah,
it's just the main one. This is like a total like switch of topics. But I also wanted to ask you, since you have been living in China for 12 years, right?
Yeah.
What's the like most interesting or like most unique thing that you've eaten there?
Okay. Probably cow shit hot pot.
Wait, what? What?
Yeah. Yeah, I think cow shit hot pot, basically.
Oh my God. You need to explain that. I don't understand.
Okay. We were on our trip, you know, we've got two television documentaries, right? Conquering Southern China, Conquering Northern China, me and my friend Sino. And we basically were traveling around all the southern provinces. And so we put out to our fans, our Chinese fans and you know, overseas fans, like, do you know any like specialty dishes we can try in these different areas? And one dude came back, he's like, yeah, you should try niu bian huo guo, which, you know, in Chinese, when you translate it, it's cow shit hot pot. And we're like, you gotta be joking, what the hell? It's like,
oh my God.
Yeah, it's a Guizhou specialty. And I have to explain to you how this works, right? So a couple hundred years ago, there was this farmer and he had constipation. He literally just couldn't go to the toilet. Okay. So he was looking at his cows and he noticed that his cows had no trouble taking a dump, right? So he thought, because in China, there's this weird thing that people think, like if you've got a problem with your brain, like if you can't think well, then eat a brain, it'll make you smart. Or if you can't walk well, eat some legs from an animal, that'll make you, you know, they've got these stupid ideas, like eat a liver makes your liver better, you know. So he thought, well, if I eat their shit, then maybe my shit will be better. So he ate their shit and it worked, right? It literally, it does work, because like all the bacteria and all the nonsense in the cow shit really gets your stomach moving, like it really does. So then it became a traditional dish. And what they do is when they kill a cow for meat or whatever, they take all the sort of digested grass and all that shit that's in the intestine, right? So it's basically shit. It's already converted into shit. And they take it out, they kind of like squeeze it and like, you know, get all the juice and everything and make a broth out of all the shit juice. And then, you know, you get the broth going and then you dip your meat or whatever and eat it out of there. It's disgusting. It smells like shit. It literally smells
really? Wow.
Like an open pit toilet, right? It's disgusting. You know, it doesn't taste all that bad, to be honest. Like if I were to give it a taste rating, because like, you know, it's basically just like cow shit grass or whatever. But the thing is, it smells literally like a toilet. And it really does work though, because we ate that and man, we have like diarrhea for like a day. It just makes your stomach work.
It's like, in a way, it's like, it sounds like it's the best laxative you could ever eat.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, you know, and all the smells of toilet and everything gets you in the mood, you know, I guess, I don't know.
So what's a food that you actually like that when you looked at it, you're like, there's no, I mean, other than the cow shit broth or hot pot, but there's a food that you had that you're like, there's no way I'm gonna like this, and you try it, like, that's really good. Now you eat it all the time, or you eat it occasionally or something, or whatever.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Nothing really, because like if it looks crap, it usually is. Except tofu. I'll say tofu. You know, when I was in the West, tofu was just like something I'd never eat because it's just bland, disgusting. You know, it's people that do yoga and shit like to eat tofu. You know, it's not something that, you know, it's just like not for me. But Chinese people know how to make tofu good. You know, like mapo tofu or something where they mix it in with meat and it's really delicious. And you get tofu skin and you get many different kinds of fried tofus and stuff. And tofu in China is amazing. So that's the one thing that I always thought was gross, which I actually ended up liking a lot. Yeah.
The only type of tofu, like the best type of tofu, in my opinion, is like the fried tofu. It's probably the worst type for you, but the fried tofu tastes good.
Yeah, it tastes great. I like it.
It's kind of funny when you look at some of the Chinese food, like, you know, actual Chinese food. It's so different than what Chinese food is here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't know if you guys saw. We actually did a short kind of almost like a documentary, not really a documentary, but we did a trip up and down the West Coast trying authentic Chinese restaurants on our ADV China channel, where we actually went looking for real Chinese food in America. And we drove my Corvette up and down, and we went to all these different places and like proper Chinese restaurants run by Chinese people. We spoke to them in Chinese. We tried their food. And we've got like, I think 8 episodes of different interesting real Chinese restaurants down the West Coast. So check it out.
That's the next thing that we have to do. We have to watch your series on Amazon, because I saw, there's the southern one, and then the northern one is crowdfunded, right?
Yeah, the southern one's the one on Amazon. And
Yeah, the southern one we funded ourselves. You know, we kind of all pitched in, and it was like a big thing that we, you know, it's our first big thing. So we all put our own money into it. I built the motorcycles for that. You know, we went in and we did this thing. Like the support driver was one of my subscribers who volunteered to come along on the adventure, you know, that kind of thing. And it was a hell of a blast. That one's on Amazon. I love that one. You know, it's probably still my favorite, just, you know, for nostalgia reasons. But the second one we crowdfunded, and, you know, we got like £56,000, which, I don't know, a couple $100,000 or something, maybe. Yeah, whatever. It was a lot. And we went and did this massive thing in the north of China. And that one's only on Vimeo. That one's not on Amazon yet. But, you know, we're still working on distribution. But they're both really awesome. Suggest you watch it. And you can see me eat that cow shit hot pot in the southern one on Amazon.
I guess what we're doing tomorrow. All of the episodes all at one time.
Yeah, it's short. It's like 2 hours all in or something. So, you know, you can sit through
each episode is like 25, 30 minutes long. Yeah, it's not too long.
Yeah, the northern China's double the length. It's like 4 hours. Yeah.
So anyone who's Amazon Prime, be sure to check that out, because you have to see that.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna check it out this weekend, because
Let me know what you think on Twitter. Send me a message.
Yeah, we will. You mentioned about motorcycles, and you have your own company. It's Churchill Custom Motorcycles, right? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So how did that all start?
Well, you know, motorcycles are it's a complicated situation here in China. Motorcycles are pretty much banned in all the big cities, right? They're not allowed, and also motorcycle sizes. You know, in most cities, of course, there are exceptions, but in most cities, the largest capacity motorcycle you can have is a 125 cc, which is tiny. It's like a kid's bike, you know, it's like a learner bike type thing anywhere else in the world, but that's the maximum you can get here. So, you know, I've always had a passion for motorcycles, and I got really frustrated with first of all, the lack of motorcycles, the fact that you can't ride them, because you see, motorcycles are seen as a poor man's form of transport, only for farmers and low-income people. So the big cities don't want them because, first of all, they break all the traffic rules. Second of all, they look crap because they're all these cheap, really cheap, rubbish motorcycles in China. They're all like pieces of garbage, basically. So they do look bad and they fall apart. And, you know, they're a poor man's vehicle. And China wants to put forward this image of being a very advanced, you know, up-and-coming, rich society. So they get rid of the motorcycles first because it makes it look poor. So that's why they ban the motorcycles. And, of course, there are other things like there's a lot of those, like, what do you call them? Those like grab and run sort of thieves that grab people's handbags and, you know, kind of dash off with them, things like that. So, yeah, I mean, they get rid of motorcycles for a lot of reasons. So anyway, basically, it came from a frustration where I wanted to have a nice looking bike that I could ride. So the only way to do it was to open my own shop and make my own motorcycles. And then, you know, me and my friend, obviously, Simo, my business partner in the motorcycle shop, we did it. And now those are the motorcycles that we ride across the country in our documentaries. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some of those. They look really good. Look better. Because, like, I know from my experience in Thailand, there's so many motorcycles everywhere, but they're like the cheap, tiny kind. So I know what you're talking about when you're saying that like major Chinese cities probably want to ban those type of things because they all don't. They don't follow any of the traffic laws. Like, people just go around cars and, like, 2 lanes becomes 4 lanes, and it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, so you know exactly what it's like. And think about in China, the motorcycles that are available in China are way worse than the ones in Thailand. You know, in Thailand, they've got Honda and things like that, but you just have these cheap Chinese knockoff brands that are terrible. So, like, they're really disgusting, cheap-looking things. Yeah.
Wow, I can't imagine that because the ones in Thailand are already not that great. I've ridden on a couple of them, and they're like nothing like the ones in the U.S. I'll just say that.
Yeah. Cool.
So how's that business going for you?
Well, okay. The thing is, it's on hold at the moment, and the reason is the village that we were operating out of. We were renting a big sort of workshop in a village, like an urban village, and we got a call one day that said, hey, they're knocking that village down next week. You've got a week to get all your stuff out of there. So, yeah. And they literally came in with big bulldozers and wrecking machines and just leveled the whole village. So we had like a week to get our stuff up. So, yeah, that happens a lot in China, by the way. Yeah. So
that's crazy.
Well, okay. Basically, the whole land ownership issue in China is very weird, right? People can't own land. The government owns all of the land. But if you are historically like a farmer and you owned a piece of land that you were farming on, then that's kind of yours. And the government, if they want to build anything there, they have to compensate you. So they have this interesting system. Depending on how many floors or levels your building or house has, they compensate you more. So like if it's only a single story, they'll give you like, I don't know, 10,000, 100,000 RMB. But if it's a double story, then they give you 200,000 RMB. So what people do is they very quickly build these like as tall as they can buildings, right? And they build it really badly. No one lives in the top floors. It's too dangerous. The whole thing will collapse. But they just build like these tall concrete buildings, right? So we were renting one of those, like the bottom part of one of those, basically. And they'd only recently been built, like within the last 10 years or so. And then the government finally paid everyone the agreed compensation. And they're like, we're going to build new high-rises here, so we're going to come knock it down. So we ended up storing all our tools and just concentrating on making videos. And, you know, we're ready to open up again if we find the correct kind of area. Yeah.
So this happened recently then?
Yeah, well, it happened last year. And the thing is, the motorcycle company was never profitable. It was more like a hobby turned into something a bit more legitimate. And we did sell a lot of these bikes, but mainly to other foreigners. But because of China's bias towards motorcycles, actual Chinese people would never buy those kind of bikes because it's too expensive, right? Because when a Chinese person wants to buy a motorcycle, it's for a utilitarian purpose. And you can go buy a brand new motorcycle for, say, a couple $100 really, US, brand new. So our motorcycles are selling for about $1,000, $2,000, and it's just too much. If you can go buy a brand new motorcycle for a couple $100, you wouldn't buy one of ours, you know?
Yeah, I guess if you're just using it to transport stuff, then you would probably just buy a cheap one.
Exactly, yeah.
That makes sense.
I want to ask you about the movie industry over there, because I think, you know, with Hollywood being, I think, probably the biggest movie industry, Hong Kong, the Hong Kong film industry, and just the Chinese film industry is one of the biggest for sure. Probably top 3 or 4 next to Bollywood and Hollywood. Yeah. But you know, did you grow up watching Chinese movies, and you know, do you still watch them now? You know, and
no, I refuse. Chinese movies suck, man. They're like some of the worst stuff you've ever seen in your life. No, seriously. And I don't want to like disparage the Chinese movie industry, because they are putting out some good stuff. Like, no doubt, they're not like across the board all terrible, but the majority of them are. Hong Kong movie industry is awesome, obviously, especially during the 90s, all the Jackie Chan movies and, you know, all that kind of thing, all the sort of kung fu things. And, you know, the Hong Kong movie industry still puts out some good stuff. But you have to understand that the movie industry in China is still very young, and they're still learning. And it's always the same kind of movies over and over again, which is annoying. And they are very constrained, because they're not allowed to make movies that are politically sensitive, or that are too raunchy, or that have, you know, cover any kind of themes that the government doesn't like. So their hands are tied. So you always see them doing the same kind of movies over and over and over again. And it's usually like a period piece from the Qing Dynasty or something, or the Red Cliff, you know, the Three Kingdoms crap, or some kind of anti-Japanese like war drama fantasy thing, you know. So it's boring, is what I'm trying to say. It's literally just boring. And occasionally they'll make a comedy, which is pretty good. But it's still, like I said, a very young industry. And so it's got a long way to go. And the restrictions really kind of stifle them. So it's not like they're not capable. They just don't make anything good.
So, but you do still watch just Hong Kong movies and movies that are from Hong Kong, right?
Yeah, sure. Hong Kong movies are awesome.
What are some of your favorites?
Wow, that's okay. Obviously, all the old classic sort of, you know, what's the name? Infernal Affairs, you know, or, you know, all the Jackie Chan nonsense from back in the day. You know, any one of his movies, you know, like Armor of God, or Police. What's it? All this police stuff and
police story, yeah.
Yeah, and then yeah, obviously the ones he made in America are hilarious. You know, like Rumble in the Bronx, and you know, all that kind of thing. But all that kind of stuff is awesome. So like anything from the 90s, there's all sorts of obscure ones as well from the 90s, which are great. You know, and God of Gambling, you know, that kind of thing. All the Chow Yun Fat movies and things. You know, like seriously, like I love Hong Kong movies. They're funny, you know, they're entertaining. There's always a lot of action. And because I know Hong Kong very well, it's awesome for me to like see, especially what it used to look like in the 80s and 90s in those movies. Yeah, I love Hong Kong movies, yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about Infernal Affairs. They kind of remade that, or remade, I guess a remake, whatever, here, called The Departed, which starred Leonardo DiCaprio and Matt Damon. It was directed by Martin Scorsese. That was basically, you know, the American version. They do a lot of remakes of Chinese movies here. Do they? I think the only one that I know of that I can remember that they actually did a remake was What Women Want, which here starred Mel Gibson and Helen Hunt, and over there I think it was Andy Lau and Gong Li. I think it was.
Oh, yeah, good old Liu Dehua. Yeah, Andy Lau. Yeah, I didn't see that one. Yeah, I mean, that's not the kind of movie I'd watch anyway, usually. So unless I was dragged there by my wife, you know.
Yeah. What is she like? What kind of movies is she like? You know, that she'll force you to watch.
She actually likes a lot of comedy stuff, which is nice. Surprisingly, she really enjoyed like Ready Player One and, you know, all the Marvel films and stuff she likes. So that's nice, you know. I'm kind of blessed that I'm not being dragged to like rom-coms and stuff all the time, which is nice. Yeah.
Okay, so what's a rom-com, a Chinese rom-com that she forced you to watch, and you're just like, this is gonna be terrible. And then you're like, ooh, that's actually pretty good.
I've been lucky. I think she respects me more than to drag me to one of those. But yeah, she likes to watch a lot of Korean dramas, you know, because that's the thing here. Korean dramas. And I have to keep asking her, why do all the men cry so much in those things? Because that's all that seems to happen. Like every time she watches it on her iPad, you know, while she's getting ready before bed and stuff, and she'll be looking at this, and I'll look over, and there's always some dude with like swish hair crying, you know, and I'm like, what's going on? What happened? So, yeah.
I know what you're talking about. It's either that or someone always has cancer or
yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah, well, you know how I was saying earlier how the Chinese aren't really confrontational and all that. Well, I think Koreans are not afraid to show their emotions. They're like, you know what? I'm gonna cry because I don't even know I'm a man, shit. I'm gonna cry anyway. You know, they're like or whatever. The Koreans like, oh no, you need a haircut. You're like, oh thanks. It's
yeah,
look like
early Koreans here. We go to the hair salon, and then they're like, how much do you want off? I'll be like, oh, like an inch, right? And they'll be like, you need like 5 inches off. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, well, why did you even ask for my opinion? Apparently you know everything. You're the hairstylist.
That's funny. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I love it. Seriously though, like all those Korean dramas, super popular over here. Japanese ones as well. Chinese dramas, not so much. You know, like I said, most of the dramas that are locally made are just sort of very poor knockoffs of Korean or Japanese dramas anyway. And, you know, the local people aren't stupid. They don't like it. So what happens is the government has these incentives for you to watch it. Like they'll actually ban all Korean TV, or they'll ban. Yeah, they do that from time to time. Like on all the streaming platforms, they'll suddenly be like, too many people are watching XYZ programs. Ban them. We have to like get our local, you know, our local production companies, give them a break, you know. And then like you'll be forced to watch like a local thing. Then people have to like download off torrent sites their favorite things, you know.
So it seems like, you know, Koreans, especially nowadays, they're known for their K-pop and their Korean dramas.
I was gonna ask about that actually.
Oh, okay.
No,
go ahead.
I was looking at like music charts, and it seems like Korean music is still on the top, depending like everywhere in Asia. Is that true in China too?
Yeah, absolutely. Korean, Japanese, mostly Korean, because you know there's a very strained history between China and Japan, obviously. So
yeah.
The thing is, it's a weird situation in China because Chinese people really do like Japanese like pop culture. So they love the styles, they love the movies, they like the music, they like all the products that come out of Japan. They like it, but at the same time, it's kind of like a guilty like, because their parents and their grandparents will be sort of like, how dare you bring that Japanese, you know, stuff into my house type thing, you know, like, you know, you can tell there's so much hate and animosity, and on the TV every day, they're kind of playing those war dramas every day to drum it into everyone's head, you know, how bad the Japanese are. So you've got like a guilty like I say. So Korea is like a stopgap in between, because they don't need to feel that guilt, you know, they can bring in that the Korean music and the Korean dramas and stuff and feel guiltless watching it and really enjoy it. So that's why the Korean stuff does very well here. Yeah, people love it. And you know,
I was just gonna say, I feel like Korea has been dominating Asia for the last couple of years. Seems like it to me, anyway.
Yeah, they've really upped like, the ante.
When I was in Thailand, everything was about Korea. Like if you had like a meatball stand on one side that had nothing about Korea, but then you had another meatball stand on the other side that said like, oh, Korean meatballs, like imported from Korea, then that would be the business.
Everyone would be over there.
Yeah.
It's the same meatballs.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting. Because like, I mean, Korean culture is pretty interesting, but like it always seems to boil down to kimchi, and I don't get it.
Yeah.
Well, kimchi's pretty good.
We had kimchi.
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, yeah, in the university, I had classmates from Korea, you know, when I was learning my Chinese back in the day. And I remember it was just so ironic, because like everybody had to do like a cultural presentation about something from their culture. And all of the Korean groups had prepared separately like a presentation. And it ended up that all of their presentations were about kimchi. It was just like, what? Yeah. I actually got to meet some North Koreans and meet some ethnic Chinese Koreans up in the north of China. It was awesome. And they actually showed me how to make kimchi, which is pretty cool too. Yeah.
You met North Koreans?
Yeah, I did. And the thing is, like, it was a bit of a shit situation, and I'll explain to you what happened. We went up to the North Korean border, and the way that I'd planned it during this adventure was, of course, to ride along the border is very dangerous because they've got a lot of military checkpoints. And, you know, we're carrying a lot of, like, we have proper camera gear, you know, we had a camera crew following us and stuff. And you don't want to be in that situation because they actually deport journalists and stuff. If journalists end up near the North Korean border on the Chinese side, they very often get deported or they get into a lot of trouble. We're not journalists, we're making a documentary. That's a different thing, but, you know, we may as well be journalists.
Yeah.
So I planned it so that we would basically, you know, parallel to the border, about 100 kilometers north, we'd be traveling on a big road. We'd stay in a small city, and then one early morning, like 4 a.m., we'd ride down to the border, film the whole border area, film ourselves at the border, and get out of there before anyone really notices. And that's what we did. So we avoided any major trouble doing that for the first sort of experience at the border, which was kind of interesting. But we ended up in this town near the border called Yanji, and, you know, there are all these sanctions against basically Korea, North Korea. You know, like all these international trade agreements with China saying, like, you're not allowed to supply North Korea with stuff, and you're not allowed to let North Koreans work in China, that kind of thing. It's all these, like, you know, and if you do that, then we're not going to deal with you. But of course, that's not really the case. So you get up there, there's tons of North Koreans working in China. And we ended up in this Korean restaurant, like North Korean restaurant, because we had a fixer who got us in there. And these like North Korean girls put on a performance for us, which was amazing. It was absolutely incredible. Like, they all played all these different instruments in their traditional outfits, and they came and gave us flowers. And, you know, it was really an amazing like experience. It was top notch, something that I'll never forget. It was really incredible. We filmed the whole thing. And it was going to be part of our documentary because we want to show, you know, the culture of China and the culture of everything that goes on here. And that was a very positive, as far as I was concerned, a very positive look at what the North Koreans are, because they were incredibly talented and it was such a pleasant experience. But unfortunately, while we were, like, filming this thing, kind of a minder, North Korean minder guy walked past the door and saw us filming, came in, shut everything down, made us delete all our footage, and you know, we recovered the footage. But the thing is, we were told basically that if anyone ever sees this, that, you know, the girls are going to. So yeah, we had to not include it, which sucked. So we have all this footage that we just can't show the world. It's beautiful, amazing footage, which sucks. Yeah.
It's quite unfortunate.
Yeah.
But at the same time, well, it's like you can't risk that, right? So.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, not from a moral point of view. We'd have to wait until something like a war breaks out or something, then we can show it. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm sure at some time down the line, you know, things will be patched up over there. It looks like there's a lot of things happening at the moment, and hopefully things will be sorted out. You know, like there are talks, and North and South Korea are finally talking to each other, and, you know.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, they just had their, I guess, their second surprise meeting. I can't remember. Yeah. I think it was. I think they had that.
Oh really? Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Someone wanted to ask you what your thoughts are on China's new social credit program.
Yeah, a lot of people ask me about that. I mean, it makes sense. You know, makes total sense. I know it's so difficult for people to understand what it's like living here unless you live here. And you have to understand the enormity of the population here. And it's so difficult to control a population this big, right? Stop it getting out of hand. And especially when you've got a huge amount of very uneducated people, which you still do in China. Like the vast majority, I'd say, of the rural people are very uneducated, lack any sort of knowledge of how the world works, things like that, because they grow up on a farm and they kind of do the farm work and they live in a rural village and they very rarely get out of there. But if they do go to the cities, you see them. They just don't know how to operate those subway machines. They, you know, squat and spit everywhere and do all sorts of crazy things. And, you know, you can tell, okay, there's a rural person right there. And so, you know, you need a system that can, in a way, account for all of this. You need to have like checks and balances in place. And I guess this is their attempt. And I don't know if it's going to be a very good outcome, but we'll have to see. But basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to give people incentives to behave well. And for instance, with the social credit system, if you screw up enough times, you don't get to travel. In other words, you're not allowed to buy plane tickets, or you're not allowed to buy train tickets, like, because everything in China here is controlled by your ID card. Like you can't buy a train ticket without your ID card, right? There's so many things you can't do without your ID card. You can't even visit the beach here in Shenzhen without your ID card, right? So if you have like a blacklist on your ID card because you, I don't know, being caught doing bad things, like, I don't even know what the criteria are at the moment, but the thing is, like, if you have enough sort of a bad score, then sorry, you don't get to visit the beach, or sorry, you don't get to travel overseas, you know, or sorry, you don't get to take the high-speed rail. So, I mean, I think what they're trying to do is trying to prevent people from doing bad things by implementing the system, you know, and maybe if you do good things and your credit score goes up again, your social credit score, and then suddenly, oh, good, now I can travel again, you know, that kind of thing. That's the main sort of gist of it all. So, yeah. Personally, I gotta say, personally, I mean, I don't like the idea. I don't think anyone likes the idea of that amount of sort of control over people. But, you know, if you were to live here and see how things are here, I can understand it, you know?
Yeah. So it's sort of like a point system that, I don't like, does like, if time goes by, does that kind of redeem you, or do you have to do certain things to?
I don't know, so I don't want to like talk out of ignorance here, but the way things work in China is you usually have to like earn back your points or pay off your fines or do what you have to do. So I'm guessing, like, let's say you default on a loan, then it's going to minus like X amount of points. But if you pay that loan back, then you get the points back. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that's another thing with the social credit thing is, like, if you have a bad score, you can't get like a home loan, or you can't like lend money from the bank and stuff like that. They won't allow you.
So if you mess that score up, then you're really kind of,
yeah. Then you
can't do anything.
You'll just have to buy a fake ID from your uncle in the police, because that's kind of how it works here anyway. So
yeah, it's almost like they're, you know, if you do something bad, then they're kind of telling you, well, you don't deserve it because, you know, you've done this bad thing, so you don't deserve to go anywhere, because it's only trying to reward you to do, you know, like you were saying, you haven't done any bad things. So if you do good things, you'll be rewarded to, you know, travel or do whatever you want, or not everything you want, but, you know,
more things.
Yeah. Oh, do you guys, are you aware of the sort of travel blacklist that they have as well? There's actually like a blacklist of travel. And what this is like people that have misbehaved, like Chinese tourists that go overseas and cause a big like scandal. Let's just say, like, it happens quite often where a Chinese tourist will go to, I don't know, Japan or something, and end up taking a dump in a temple, or, you know, like damaging like an artifact, or doing something really embarrassing for China, right? Those people get blacklisted and they're not allowed to travel anymore. And like people that cause like fights on airlines and things like that, they get like, sorry, you're not allowed to fly anymore, because it's an embarrassment to China for those people. So there already is something like that in place before this whole social credit thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know about that, but I guess it kind of makes sense, because that seems how their government and their culture works. So
yeah, it's all about face. So if someone loses face for China, because that's usually what happens, then that person will get punished, and the punishment is like, you're not allowed to travel anymore, because we don't want you going overseas again and doing something like that again, you know?
Yeah. That makes sense according to their culture.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
I think we covered a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, we did cover a lot of ground.
Yeah, this was really fun. I'm so glad I got to talk to you. Like, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I'm really happy to talk to you guys as well. It's always good to get a different perspective on things, and I'm glad you were asking all the interesting questions that you did. It's fantastic. I appreciate it.
I hope we asked some questions that you hadn't heard before, or at least hadn't heard in a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you know, it's good to speak to different people, you know. And yeah.
And if we ever go to China, hopefully we'll get to.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, you're always welcome. If you're ever in, if you stop in Hong Kong or coming over to Shenzhen or whatever, you just let me know.
Okay. Yeah, we're planning a trip to Asia next year, so it's possible that we might stop there.
Yeah,
so
definitely
hopefully.
Possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
I guess.
Well, fantastic.
All right. Well,
thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us. I know you're really busy. Oh, you know what? Actually, one thing I wanted to ask: how was your anniversary yesterday?
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right.
Oh, it was great. Thanks. It was super cool. We went out for like a really nice dinner, and you know, had a bunch of drinks, and it was just fantastic. You know, so it's a good thing to celebrate. It's 3 years now, which is nice.
Nice.
Oh, that's awesome.
Congratulations.
Thanks a lot, guys. It's awesome to talk to you, like I said, and you know, this whole Happer thing, it is what it is. I mean, at the end of the day, you're just who you are, you know. You can't let your race define you. You know, you just have to be who you are. And I understand when you're part of, you know, I'm a British South African, right? So I'm, in a way, I am a mix. You know, I got tons of different kinds of genetic heritage, who knows? I've taken one of those DNA tests, and it's crazy. It lights up like a Christmas tree. The thing is, you know, when you've got different cultures as a part of you, it just strengthens you. You know, you have a different perspective from, you know, from other people. It's really a positive thing. There's nothing wrong with having different cultures as a part of you, and makes you a stronger individual. So, you know, that's these people that see being a Happer as like a negative thing, they're just so wrong. You know, you got to just embrace it for who you are. And you can try your best to say, oh, I'm more white, or I'm more Chinese, or I'm more Japanese, or more Filipino. Doesn't screw all of that. You are who you are, and you've got the positives from both sides. So embrace them and use them, you know, for the good of mankind.
That's like the best ending words ever. So
yeah.
Thanks, guys. It's been super cool talking to you, and I'm sure we'll do this again sometime.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to do another one for sure. Yeah, it's gonna be. Yeah. So it was a lot of fun. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Cheers. You guys have a good one. Huh? Stay awesome.